This episode is brought to you by Roundtable Group, the experts on experts. We've been connecting attorneys with experts for over 30 years. Find out more at roundtablegroup.com.
Welcome to Engaging Experts. I'm your host, Noah Ballmer. Today, I'm excited to welcome Dr. Mark Czarnota to the show. Dr. Czarnota is an associate professor of horticulture at the University of Georgia. He's an expert in topics ranging from weed control to Christmas trees. Dr. Czarnota holds a PhD in floriculture and ornamental horticulture from Cornell. Dr. Czarnota, thank you so much for joining me here today on Engaging Experts.
Thanks for having me. It'll be an interesting conversations.
Absolutely. Let's jump into it. So, as a horticulture professor, how did you first become involved in expert witnessing?
I guess just like everyone else that's an academic like me, publish a paper or do a video or some sound clip or something. And usually it's been through my extension publications. They'll find out what I'm doing and there'll be something pop up legally that's associated with it. And then I get some phone calls.
Tell me about the phone calls. What are the sorts of questions that you get asked? What are the sorts of questions you like to ask? Tell me about the vetting process a little bit.
The first call I got, I guess, would have been well, first, I should say my job entails this type of work all the time anyway. So I have my position here is mainly at the University of Georgia is mainly weed control and specialty crops, which are all the horticultural crops, which there just isn't many people out there that do this type of work. So I think last time I counted, if you put everybody in a pot, there might be 10 people in the country do the research and stuff that I do.
Wow.
So it's quite unique. And I guess we're in our field. The first expert witness case I did, I got to remember that would have been a blueberry case. It was dealing with herbicide drift. Often it happens. They're spraying a herbicide on a forest situation. It drifts over on the blueberry field, and all of a sudden 60 acres of blueberries are damaged, and they're trying to get an attorney, an expert witness, and put all this together. And they need somebody to opine on what happened and uh, if they can mitigate it anyway, and if not, what are the damages? And then it just led from there. There's horticultural cases. I've done a lot of bamboo type cases. Anyway, but it just never seems to end.
When you are first having those phone calls, are there any red flags or anything that you watch out for? I know you said that there's only like 10 people doing exactly what you do. Do you ever have to go a little bit outside the four corners of your experience and read up on anything in order to take an engagement?
Oh, I have to read up on everything, even if I'm an expert in the field, because things are always changing and it's never ending. I always tell people I'm 59 and I learn something every day, and it's been like that for all my life. It could be something simple on how a car works to, use generally with my job, some piece of equipment or how a plant reacts to something. It's always something new and something to be learned.
Yeah, that's important. It's not just about being an expert, but it's about maintaining that expertise. So you say that you're always reading. I know obviously you're an academic. What exactly does it mean to maintain expertise in your field?
That's a great question. I guess I often think I'd like to think I have retirement in my sights in the next few years, but part of me it's going to be hard to let all that go because once I leave this field, everything goes away. I'm kind of on the cutting edge of stuff. I go to meetings, watch people give lectures, constantly on top of literature. Something could happen in the state. We get blanket emails from all the other people that work closely in my field that I kind of have close ties with, and it's related to me. All that kind of goes away. So that in itself is being the expert because you're just kind of not only do I draw on the 30 years of experience that I have, but you're also taking in all the new stuff on the front end that's happening, with all the AI technology, the drone technology, which I think is going to be problematic in my field. It has great, I shouldn't say completely bad, but there'll be some good things from it and bad things from it as well that I could see happening. But it's those type things that I think makes you maintain your expertise.
Absolutely. When you say going to meetings, are there professional associations in your field that you have to be credentialed with, or is it more of just continuing to stay up to date on developments?
Yeah, it would be the latter there. I think,
Sure.
credentialed. The only thing I'm credentialed in is I'm a certified arborist, and I did that because I got tired of arguing with people, and they always want you to have this certified arborist thing, which it was mainly herbicide type cases I would deal with, and unfortunately, the Arborist Association doesn't have any training on that, even though the people act like they do and really don't
Hmm.
understand how herbicides work, what they do, and the implications of them. I think they they really have a firm understanding of that. But that would be the only thing I have the credentials in, and I guess I have to maintain credentials in my. We have to have pesticide applicator licenses. There's all kind of little nitpicky things, but probably the only two things I can think of off the top of my head would be the certified arborist and the pesticide certification in my state I have to maintain. And that's always changing. It's good for 5 years. You're supposed to get points and all this. But anyway, it's kind of funny because I give lectures and give myself points, which I don't understand why we just don't get a pass for that. It doesn't make any sense to me. So anyway, and often have arguments with them about points and how things work. But anyway.
With so few people in your field, I imagine you do a fair amount of travel. Is that right?
Yeah, this year the funding's down a little bit this year for what I usually
Mhm.
do, but generally I'm always putting out. I mainly work with ag chemical companies that develop pesticides of all ranges. But generally I work with just the specialty crops. I also work with companies with adjuvant technology, which is the adjuvants and how they work, and that basically makes the pesticides work better. I've done work with that, and but I do a lot of in-house stuff at our station where I work. But I do travel to farmers, actual farmers' fields, deal with their, find out what the problems are, what issues they're having, and try to help them out become more productive. Because that's part of what my mission is here is on my position. Um, and I also travel, out of state to do expert witness stuff. I do consulting work also to help people, guide them on I guess developing good programs, or if they're having trouble with a lot of weed issues, I can help them with that. I can go visit the site, write a report up, and then answer questions and help guide them on that. And of course, I go to meetings also, which is only a couple times a year. Three,
Sure.
4 times a year, I have meetings out of state.
With site visits and a little bit of travel, with respect to being an expert witness specifically, in your contract, do you build in any special terms to account for like travel rates or different rates depending on what you're doing or where you are?
Yeah, it just depends. Usually I'll just charge a fee for visiting a farm, and then and plus travel expenses. So, and I don't have to fly first class or anything like that. I just get there. And the thing I really like about doing the expert witness stuff is that it's always very educational for me.
Hmm.
Uh, I know some people don't like it because it ends up. I've only gone once to court. I've been deposed many, many times, uh, but usually, of course, it settles out of court, and then but just going through that process, I really helps me learn a lot of things about what I do in my field, uh, and also I see the need for publications for things in the legal field too. Where I always have problems with. One of the biggest things is just valuation of plant material. When a plant would be injured, an ornamental plant's injured, but yet it's going to come back. I think there should be some fee given by the insurance company for aesthetical loss, and that there's really nothing published on that, and it's really nothing, you can really, hard, fast rules. It's always what the clients and the insurance companies agree to. So, but it would be nice to have some type of percent. I can value out the tree and tell you what it's worth, but what is the loss if that tree doesn't have all its leaves for 2 years, or
Hmm.
doesn't do well. So, but there's all kind of stuff like that runs through.
You mentioned going to depositions and trials. If you were an expert, you've never been to a deposition before, what are the sorts of things that you can expect? What's the place like? What are the sorts of questions that you get asked? How long is it? Just kind of walk me through a deposition from your perspective.
The first trial I did, I caused a mistrial because I told him I was getting paid by the insurance company, but I didn't, but I kind of did. And then, of course, I caused a mistrial, but the lawyer was trying to get a mistrial and stopped the trial like 3 times. But the problem is I guess to the lawyers out there, you need to explain the ground rules to your expert witness if they go on the stand. Look, you can't do this. One of the cardinal sins, it'll cause a mistrial. This is what you can't say, can and cannot say. Me being as ignorant as I was 20 years ago, I guess that happened, or God, it's almost 20 years ago. I can't believe that. And then what I learned from that, and the thing, the problem, the sad thing was, is that guy was going to win that case once I got up on the stand because all the information I was going to give, and he was doing everything he could to keep me off the stand. And then, but there was just the questions for depositions. It's general just, uh, I noticed that if you're like me and you're brand new, they try to strong arm you and get you to say things that's not true. I always stick by the science. And the last one I had with bamboo, what the lawyer was trying to pigeonhole me into getting to say what he wanted me to say, but of course I backed off, and he was trying to uh, limit. I guess we were talking about the different things about how to maintain a horticultural system, and I basically went back and said that it's about what I've learned over the years on how to run important parameters and providing good growth measures to plant material, and things like that you have to draw off of. And a lot of times when you're new, you know the information, but you don't really know what to say because you can't uh, withdraw that information from your memory banks to make that deposition, I guess, go in the client's favor as well as your favor, and what they're trying to do. But generally the questions I get are they want to know things like, example, what I just said, the value of a tree. If I come up with some type value, they want to know where I got that. You have to tell them, and there's really no hard, fast, publishable source to go off of, and they'll really, hone in on that. But I think most of the things, if I usually stay to the facts and stuff that I do, and not try to draw me off on something I'm not an expert on, I usually don't have issues with it. On the number of times I've been deposed, it's been pretty good as far as I think I've helped out clients.
Do you feel that your attorneys have done a pretty good job preparing you for those depositions and for that one time that you were in trial? Or going back, would you prefer your attorney had better prepared you or run you through some mock depositions? What sorts of preparation techniques work for you?
Well, I haven't been on any big, multi well, I've been on some big cases, but none of them, of course, went to deposition. But those type people would have really going through some mock trials with me, or mock depositions, to try to help me out and tell me kind of avoid pitfalls that you would have. But it's usually the small type little farmer things that we have. This is where you don't get much help, and then you kind of got to draw on from what you've learned in the past. But and it's usually younger lawyers, and they don't sometimes understand that you got to kind of tell the person what they got to do. But generally, once you've done one or two, you kind of know what to do, and in what you're supposed to do. And and my whole thing is, I always tell people, I try to seek the truth. That's my job. And then and the problem is there's twisty roads getting to that point to exactly what the truth is, and they'll try to, the other side's going to try to go after that. And I understand that because I know I've been on both sides as far as working for insurance companies and working for clients. So you kind of know where, okay, this is the questions I'd be asking that person if I was you. And so I sometimes can help the lawyers guide them when they're doing the depositions on someone else, as well as them telling me what to look for and what the rules and what I can and cannot say, I guess, as far as the legal stuff, that's kind of not in my wheelhouse. I'm not a lawyer, although once you've been involved in the system enough, you kind of learn what's legal and what can cause a mistrial and what can't.
You're an academic. Do you find that you have to teach the attorney a lot of the time some of the technical details about what it is that you're being engaged for, so that they can perform their job better?
Well, I've come to notice after all the depositions, or all the, I guess, expert witness stuff that I've been involved in, sometimes there's conflicts, and they're trying to win a case, and I'm trying to seek the truth. So sometimes these things mesh very well together, and sometimes they do not. um, and I guess a lot of times, on the one large case I was involved in with a herbicide with DuPont. Uh, I guess I, it, I was getting bothered sometimes that they really didn't care about the, I guess, what was going on with the actual herbicide and what was happening. So you kind of have to let them on. Though I notice a lot of times I don't want to be mean, but they're so ignorant about agricultural systems that it really takes you have to go back to really to the starting point of where we're going to make them understand, okay, this is how a plant works, because most of the lawyers don't know the difference between a soybean and plant and a corn, stalk, and then let
Sure.
alone when you're dealing with the other thing, technical issues with herbicides and how they work. Because I barely understand half of that myself because we just don't understand that information. But that's the type of information I think getting from the just the simple growing methods and the simple agronomic practices to actually to the science to get you where what happened in this case. This is why this happened, and this is what you need to do to try to mitigate this. And I think a lot of times, yes, I could say I'd. It's kind of a back and forth, I think, with the lawyers because I don't know what I know they're trying to win this case, and I usually wouldn't take something on which I know that's not right. But if
Right.
it's something that I can help with, I'll. It's some back and forth between us to get them where they need to go, as well as stay on that track of seeking the truth is what I try to do.
Tell me a little bit about your report writing strategy when you have to write an expert witness report and you have all this technical information. How do you parse that in a way that conveys your opinion strongly, but also is approachable to laypersons who might actually be reading it?
That's a great question. Once you wrote one or two, you can start drawing off of those to know how to guide you to do things. There's always differences in the cases, with the crop I'm working with, the time frame that the herbicide or the damages have occurred, whether it be herbicides or some other horticultural issue. But that generally, it's once you've written a couple, you can really, hone that in. But it's just sitting down writing. It's just a difficult thing. I always tell people I wrestle with it
Mm.
because you write it and then you read it 3 or 4 times till you're happy with it, and then and the technology is getting so much better for spelling errors, grammatical issues, all that. It just makes it so much easier to write because you have things going on in your mind, you're trying to get things out, and it just I always want type of person just get out on the paper and then go back and edit it and change it and refine it to make it readable and professional. So anyway, but
Sure.
I could tell you generally it's just getting that first one out. It's kind of right when I'm writing a dissertation or a thesis that you've written or even a publication. People don't have any idea when you go through a publication. This is when you write a peer reviewed publication, it's 3 years worth of work usually or 2 years, and then you write all this out, and then you send it to reviewers, and then they chew it all up and send it back or reject it, and then you got to resubmit it, and it can be very difficult and trying at times. But as you go through that process, you learn how to kind of avoid the pitfalls of publication things. But if I could tell anybody, just do one. If you just do one and get that out, you will build off of that, and you'll build off the Excel spreadsheets, the calculations of losses. Everything is so much easier once you have gotten it going through that process once.
Well, you've been doing this for a while. You're published. You've written a lot of reports. You've been in a lot of actions. Do you ever have to keep track of everything that you've said in a way because you might be impeached in a deposition because of something that you once said 20 years ago? Maybe the technology's changed, maybe the methodology's changed, maybe you've changed your mind about something. Is that something you've ever had to contend with?
I think the only thing I'd have to say with what it, if I had to change anything on my deposition, I don't think I don't I know they're recording stuff a lot more now, but I don't
Or
think that would be the problem I have is when I'm signing, I have to be much more adamant when I'm reading over a contract I signed for an attorney because I had one case several years ago I signed and noticed not without reading it because usually it's just like you're not going to divulge this information, but they stuck in things in there that I can't work on any cases involving this herbicide for the rest of my career, and I signed that. That was a big mistake on my part. So that's the type of things I'm very adamant when I read stuff over. I'll be sure to cross that out and initial it, and then say, I won't work for anyone else as long as you're not paying me." So it's just stuff like that. You just have to be careful what you're signing. If I could tell anybody new to make sure you read that contract over you're signing very quickly. It's usually only a paragraph, but it can be very powerful sentences in that paragraph. But as far as what I say, I everything I say is based on all the scientific information that I dig up, and that of course can change. So if that changes, I'll be able to prove that. So I don't that doesn't bother me at all. I don't really think about those type things, but more what the attorneys are making me sign to go back years ago so I can't work on anything in the future that would bother me more than anything else.
Sure. Let's talk routines a little bit. Do you have any pre-deposition, pre-trial? Is there anything that kind of gets you ready, gets you in the right headspace for an action? I've had guests tell me that they like to drink a lot of coffee, do yoga, fast, make sure they get sleep. Is there something that works for you that just kind of gets you ready?
Now I'm just a normal person. I try to work out. I love being in a weight room, in the garden. I love fixing things. Very grew up, parents were blue collar. My dad worked at Chrysler as a guard. My mom was a nurse, so
Hmm.
we had what we needed. Kind of figured it out, and I don't really need any of that stuff at all. I try to take care of myself best I can. I just know the one thing, if I'm super tired, I tend to not be so sharp, and I try to avoid that if I can. But it's amazing how I end up going to bed at 2 or 3 in the morning, still at 59, and you're like, "Why am I up so late? Why am I writing this at 3 AM and then have to get up at 6:30 to get my daughter on the bus?" So I have a special needs daughter, so it makes it very it makes for an interesting life. I rescue dogs. I have a bunch of dogs I gotta feed. My wife's a nurse. She works. It's a full life. So wide open and, anyway. So, but
Absolutely.
nothing special, just normal, try to get some sleep, normal life. And if you're a well sharpened person, with good background, I don't think you're gonna have a problem.
You don't have to give any details. I know a lot of this could be confidential, but there some stories or some moments that either fundamentally change the way that you do something regarding expert witnessing or reinforce something that you already do?
Yeah, that would be the latter. Because I've come into situations. The biggest ones are when we have herbicide damage on a tree. You get an arborist in, they want to cut the tree down. And I'll put the brakes on all that and say, look, I've seen this happen before. Uh, 90% of the time, this tree's going to come back within 2 years. And you guys want to cut down this, 200-year-old specimen just for the insurance money. And I think that's criminal. And I'll do everything I can to stop that and at least put the brakes on to give the tree a chance to come back. And then I'd have to say, probably out of 5 or 6 cases I've been involved in, I think all the trees that I've been involved in, they came back. And
Excellent.
so that's why I do this, and that's prevent people from it's really the lawyers using the insurance companies just to try to make money because I mean we're talking, it's not that much money really in most people's eyes, but $1 million case to me for 6 trees in someone's yard, and they would have cut them all down, and they're still alive, and they're like, I think they're going to come back. Here's why, and at least I can put the brakes on all that for them removing it, and at least try to convince the homeowner just give them a year or two, and the lawyers are biting at the bit to cut them down before anything like that would happen on the other side. And those are the type of cases I love to do. Or when somebody's obviously done something wrong in for example, that blueberry case I mentioned, the guy had 60 acres of blueberries that, about a $1.4 million losses, but it's about $150,000 an acre. So do that times about
Wow.
40 acres were damaged. And really all of them need replanted at that point because you damaged so much. And then the DuPont case I was on was worth the $1.5 billion. And I was the person that was really steering those lawyers in the right direction, I thought, for what had happened. And the sad thing on that case, there were so many other people missing things because they just didn't have an understanding of what was going on with those products and how the trees reacted on it.
On a big case like that, were there other experts that were also on the case kind of as a trial team?
Yeah, we had 4 people on that one. Four, 1, 2, 3. They're actually 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, there were 4 of us on that case.
What extent do you interact and work with them, or do you at all?
Oh yeah, we worked it together quite a bit, and then that was very helpful. The problem is when you get 2 or 3 people that don't like one another, and then that's I wouldn't say didn't like one another, but just didn't like the personality. It's just life. You just get people that you really just
Sure.
don't like their personalities. But I respected them. I'll give you that, but just didn't. That makes it difficult. But most of the time, I get along with most people. It just some academics can be very curmudgeony, I guess is what they say. Anyway.
Let's back up to kind of a general question. What does it take to get off on the right foot with your engaging attorney, and how do you maintain that momentum throughout an engagement? And the other side of that coin is, are there any red flags that you're like, ah, wow, this isn't going so hot. Somebody should do something.
Um, no, I've never had anything go to trial, so it wasn't anything, other than one that went to trial that I caused a mistrial. That one, it wasn't a big case. It was more that the guy was really angry at his neighbor, and it should have never gone to trial. It could have been worked out very easily. So, but on the big case I worked on with DuPont, of course, I didn't even get deposed at that one. But anyway, the attorney that I dealt with was absolutely fabulous.
Mm.
He knew how to talk to us because he had several other attorneys in his group that weren't so their interpersonal skills weren't the best. And but the fellow that I dealt with was just fabulous. And he knew how to talk to us, prepare things, was understanding about stuff, just great. So I really haven't had any really negative things, because I just know how attorneys work. They'll send you stuff and wanted it 2 days ago. So, and I usually finish it, and then you don't hear back from them for 2 weeks. So you're like, oh, you needed that really quickly, but it's just that's where you start figuring that the wheels of justice turn very slow.
Do you
So,
find yourself on those tight timelines a lot where they need an expert witness report like 3 hours from now?
oh yeah, I've been it's incredible some of the cases I've dealt with where they'll want it, they'll call you up last minute, oh, we need this tomorrow, and it's like, yeah, I can get it to you, but then I'm able to draw off other stuff I've written, and I usually know stuff. I can look stuff up really quickly and move in that direction pretty quickly. And then if it's something that's unrealistic, I'll tell them that, and they'll move stuff around. But it's it's usually with getting ready to do a deposition, and they end up settling out of court anyway, so it was a moot point.
Sure, sure. Is that typically because the attorney is bringing you in kind of last minute and they really should have brought you in a little bit earlier, or is it because new information is found and they're like, "Oh, gee, I need an expert."
No, they just can't find anybody because they don't know about it. So, and then all of a sudden I pop up, and then they're like, "Oh, this happened like a year ago. Can you help me out with this?" And I mean, I just got a call from a guy, but he knows me, but he had it's in North Carolina. It's a herbicide case on blueberries, and anyway, he's got a few acres, but he just waited too long, and then anyway, but just that type of stuff happens all the time.
With such a small community, in your field, do you know each other, all the experts in the field? Do you ever find yourselves, across the table, like, against the other guy? You're on the plaintiff side, he's on the defendant side, and know each other?
Sure do, happens all the time. So
What's that dynamic like?
it's just a small group of people. It's usually I'll get involved with other like row crop guys that are in my field. So I really don't know them that well. So, I just know who they are, and it's fine. And, you know,
Sure.
just it doesn't bother me. I don't care. It's just, and I'll go, you learn when you get a doctorate degree, you can go toe to toe with anyone. You just get to a point, and it's like being a good attorney. I mean, you're going to make people mad, and it's just your job, and you're just trying to do it. I'm always amazed at attorneys when I went through the one case that I caused the expert where I caused the mistrial. The two attorneys like hated one another in the courtroom, but you get out and they're talking to each other like, "Oh, how's your kids doing?" It's like everything's put down, and you just
Right.
you be human towards each other.
You leave it on the field.
Correct. Yes. Yes, sir.
Before we wrap up, do you have any last advice for expert witnesses or attorneys working with experts?
Yeah, so I guess for people like me, I think it's a great thing to do. You can make a little extra money for your life, and the great thing for me is it's such a learning process for me because I get involved in things that are really hot topics that are going on right now. And then, I would encourage people to do it. Sometimes, people are going to try to hurt your feelings and make you look not so good, but people do that all the time in our fields. If you have a doctorate degree anyway, when they're questioning you, if you're presenting research, I can tell you that happens all the time. So it's nothing that you should be scared of. And then as far as the attorneys, it's just, I guess, finding people, like if you have any horticulture or agricultural cases, it's often hard to find people that are experts in the field that you're looking for. But usually, if you turn to land grant universities, you can find the people, and you might be able to get some to do expert witness cases. But I know a lot of my friends won't do it because it's just time consuming. They have families and they just have no interest in it. There are plenty if you look around. You can find people to do things like that, because I think when you go for a law degree, you'll go to school. It's not a land grant university. They have no ag school. So if you don't have if you grew up in the city and you really haven't had a horticulture or agricultural experience, it's really hard to connect those things together and realize that there's people out there that actually do research in these type things, and have lots of information that could help guide your case in a good direction.
Absolutely. Dr. Czarnota, thank you so much for joining me here today.
No problem, man. Glad I helped. It was very interesting. I tell you, it's just a learning process the whole time. Nice to meet you, man. Have a good one now.
And thank you, as always, to our listeners for joining us for another edition of Engaging Experts. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to our podcast, Engaging Experts. Our show notes are available on our website, roundtablegroup.com.